Welcome, friends, to the Someone Gets Me podcast. I am your host, Dianne A, and I am so delighted that you're here. This podcast was created because I believe there is a visionary leader inside each one of us who is waiting to be seen. In each episode of Someone Gets Me, you will hear useful tips from successful visionaries who will share their stories about how being seen has allowed them to take their vision out into the world with action. The space between who you are and what you become. Hi, everybody. It's Dianne here at Someone Gets Me. And I have Mike Parker with me. He's in Wales and I'm in North Carolina, United States. So we have crossed the Atlantic to have this great conversation with you about the liminal space, that space in the middle. And we know that gifted people have a difficulty with this sometimes because we like things to be in a certain way. And there's freedom and excitement in this liminal space. And we're going to learn about this from an expert. And so get your tea, sit back, and enjoy our conversation about all things liminal, spacious, consciousness, and whatever else we come up with. So Mike, welcome to the Someone Gets Me show. And thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to be here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am so excited to have you here because I was putting together a multiple author book years ago, and one person who is an acupuncturist wrote about the liminal space, and I just love that phrase. And then I meet you, and then right after we talked the first time, I was reading something else and it came up again. I'm like, okay, here we are again, 3 times in a very short period of time. And it's something that I find really fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, I know you didn't start with liminal space. So tell us a little bit, give us a little backstory. Who are you? We know you live in Wales. You told me that. Who are you? How'd you get here? Give us a little bit of flavor juiciness of who Mike Parker is.
A real quick one. It's a pretty long checkered story, but it really, I guess it does begin really with nearly getting thrown out of school at 14 for hypnotizing my classmates during the lunch hour, and and that began. I was just absolutely fascinated. It began a lifelong fascination with everything around psychology and consciousness and stuff like that. And I wasn't really able to pursue that. My parents split up and all kinds of other things happened, and had a pretty difficult time for some years. And then after that, I got into information technology, and I ended up installing mission critical payment systems around the world for about a decade, I think it was, and then became a senior consultant for another 20 years. Did an MBA, and I think all the time that I was doing that, I was also working on all this other stuff, thinking about all these other things, reading about all these different things. It was never really satisfying. And I reached a point where things got really bad at work, worse and worse. And it was more and more difficult to cope with the kind of politics and the internecine fighting and all the rest of it. And when I did my MBA, I was looking at strategy, finance, and innovation. I was really trying to use it to work out why most organizations are so dreadful to work in. And I honestly, I came to the conclusion that it had everything to do with what was happening to the people and inside the people themselves, and the consciousness of ourselves and consciousness of what was happening with other people around us was absolutely fundamental to how organizations ran. And it was a bit of an epiphany, because I just suddenly felt, wait a minute, in actual point of fact, for people to be treating each other well, to not be living in fear of one another, would produce the most enormous positive results for the organization and for performance, as opposed to the idea that everyone has to be fighting and competing all the time. Right. So I guess what happened was I got so fed up with it. I did a formal retraining in solutions-focused hypnotherapy And I spent the last 11 years developing that, along with a whole bunch of deep neuroscience study into a technique that I call liminal coaching.
That's exciting.
So
I
that's kind
love
of a
it.
brief summary. I've
Well,
missed out, or I've missed out all the really scurrilous bits, of course.
so, but I imagine that even all those things that you left out have pivotal pieces within how you landed where you are because of being excited about psychology and understanding consciousness and things
Yeah.
like that. I think that nothing went to waste.
Well, it was extraordinary, you know. Um, Even when I was working and putting in payment systems, the synchronicities which occurred were just extraordinary. And so I ended up in South Africa 4 months after the first elections. I spent 3 months in the Middle East in between the two Gulf Wars. And it was the most eye-opening, mind-changing series of experiences, especially the experience in South Africa. And I was running into people who had been trained as sangomas, indigenous healers, and all kinds of other things just happened.
Right. Yeah. So, have any of those experiences colored your work today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the work I do, it's firmly science-based, and so it's kind of non-woo-woo in the most important way. But it draws on a very, very broad and wide base of ideas and thoughts and approaches, which I consider to be like lenses, really, different ways of looking at reality. But I think one of the most important things, and this is a huge topic of mine, so if I start wandering off down a rabbit hole, you might have to yank me back, but that is metaphor. I would say everything is metaphor.
Mhm.
So when you look at how, for example, an indigenous healer might work, they are expert at working with metaphor. So they will set up situations for somebody who's ill, which which metaphorically reflect drawing the disease out of them and making them better. And it's effective. It's effective because it's effective not because it's medicine in the traditional Western sense, but because it's another kind of medicine where the subconscious recognizes the patterns in metaphors and it actually works with those patterns. So when it sees that happening, it goes, oh, yeah, okay, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to fix. That's where the pattern's gone wrong.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's fascinating, I think. And I actually think that metaphor, our deep understanding of metaphor, is a key to being less patronizing towards other cultures and other historic periods and understanding much better the things that people may have discovered and developed in those areas, in those times, and in those cultures.
Oh yes, I think metaphor is so critical and so important.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people, a lot of in general, I think a lot of people don't really pay as much attention to the power of metaphor as especially as you're speaking of. So we're talking about the whole liminal space and consciousness, and I don't know if everybody really understands what liminal is or how it really is important. Like,
Hmm.
what's the importance of understanding liminal space to a gifted neurodivergent person
Let's
who
say
is an
first of all,
outlier?
let's say first of all that liminal comes from the Latin root limen, which means a doorway. So
Mhm.
it's all about thresholds. It's about states, things in flux, things which are changing. So a liminal time, for example, would be at dawn or sunset. In the Celtic tradition, the gateway between the worlds is meant to open at those two times of day. And I think that and for me, the liminal state is something very definite, which is where we hover halfway between conscious and subconscious in a semi-dream state where we're very close to subconscious and it becomes much more fluid and easy and possible to communicate with the subconscious through metaphor, which is the fundamental basis of what I do with liminal coaching. And one of the reasons that it has actually been helpful for people who are neurodivergent is that there's no insistence that you have to think particular things or focus for long periods of time or anything like that. Our entire technique is based on allowing people to think about whatever they like and drift and dream if they want to. They can nap, even nap, and it'll work, still work just fine. Because metaphors just keep working at a subconscious level regardless. And that lets everyone off the hook.
Right. So what about the overthinker? What about I'm just sitting here sitting like, to me, that would be heavenly, right?
Mm.
But then what about the person who is the overthinker, who always has to have a compartmentalize, and they're just so blocked up in their head that they even have a hard time with any energetic headed into their body or heart or whatever? Like, what could we do for those people? Because a lot of gifted people, live so cognitively heavy
Mm.
that some of them aren't even aware of it. So how do you approach somebody like that who's that deep of an overthinker?
I think that what has worked many times, I don't know if it would work with everybody, but what's worked many times is creating an atmosphere where people feel that there is permission for them not to have to worry about anything,
Mm,
that you haven't got, there are no goals. There's nothing, you don't have to achieve anything. For the next period of time, you don't even have to listen to me if you don't want to, it's fine. But for the next period of time, you're just completely free to not worry about anything, any restriction or any goal or any destination or anything like that.
do you ever have somebody who has a hard time doing that you work with?
Yeah, I have had not that many people actually, interestingly enough,
Mm,
and I have had a number of ADHD clients and people on the spectrum who have subsequently said to me, "Wow, that's amazing! It's the first time I've really been able to completely relax in this kind of thing." And I think the key thing for me was when you said to me, you don't have to focus, you don't have to concentrate, you don't have to worry. You can think about whatever you like. So if your mind goes wandering off, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem.
right. So that permission to be able to just be in the flow of it and
Yeah,
not have to perform
yeah, yeah.
is where.
I think that's a big key part of it actually is
Yeah, yeah,
you don't the message is you don't have to perform masking for this.
right. Yeah.
You don't have to try and be normal. This isn't normal, and by the way, neither am I. So we're,
Right.
we're gonna do fine together.
Right, exactly. But and you take away the whole that whole like grind of I have to perform or be a certain way or mask a certain way,
Mhm.
and you say for this time you can lay that down,
Mm.
and you're in a safe space to wander and be and whatever it is that comes.
Yeah. And yeah, and you know what? And also it's fine if you want to talk about if you want to talk about spend 20 minutes talking about the implications of quantum theory for the observer problem, then no problem. I might not understand what you're talking about, but then again I might. So we could still have some fun.
Right, you just never know.
Yeah, that's right.
But I think that permission is so important
It
for the
is. Really
opening,
is.
you know, to allow the opening to invite in
Mm.
the harmony thing. So what would be the desired result that when you're working with somebody, whether it's in per session or by however long you work with them, what is the desired result? Why would people want to do the kind of coaching you do, and what results do we have?
I think the desired result would be what they want to have happen.
Okay.
Where do you want to be? So there are two kind of touchstone things, I guess, about the technique I use. And it's split into two sections in a session. So in the first half, we will use a solutions-focused approach, which I absolutely love because it's so simple, but it's so powerful. And that is to simply encourage people to talk about and think about where they'd like to be. What does better look like for you? What's it like if you're feeling much more where you'd like to be? And quite often people will start off by saying, "Well, I wouldn't wake up full of anxiety. I wouldn't wake up and immediately look at the bank balance and think, oh my God, I'm going to die. I wouldn't, and I wouldn't, and I wouldn't, and I wouldn't." And at that point, I would probably say something like, "Okay, so that's great, but this is what I call the blue elephant moment." Okay.
Right.
So
Yes.
if I tell you not to think about blue elephant, what's the first thing that happens? Right? Boom,
Hmm.
blue elephant. And the thing is that there's good evidence, really strong evidence out there that by imagining something happening and feeling the feelings around it, you will actually add as much stress to your what I call your stress reservoir as the actual event would.
Hmm.
So every time you think about when I say, okay, what does better look like? And you say, well, this wouldn't happen and that wouldn't happen and that wouldn't happen. What you're actually doing is you're evoking the things that you don't want to have happen and you're adding more stress to yourself and you're actually making yourself feel bad. So what I want to ask you is if that list of things, I made the list of things you mentioned. So if you didn't wake up feeling anxious, what would you be feeling instead? What might you be feeling instead? And then people start saying, well, I don't know. I'm not even sure I could imagine that. And then, oh, go on, give it a go. Just pretend. Well, I guess I'd feel lighter. I guess I'd feel like really enthusiastic about the day. I'd want to get out of bed and I'd want to explore and find out things. And I'd spend some time for myself before going to that rotten job and stuff like that. And suddenly you see people begin to start thinking, hey, wait a minute. I could do that. I could have a little walk in the morning. I could actually spend some time with myself before having to go and start engaging with the world. And that starts changing things straight away. But we work more and more on building up the vision and the view of where someone wants to be. And that has an effect of programming the anterior cingulate, this part of the brain which acts like a super secretary. And when you visualize where you're going to be and what's going to be happening, it then goes off and it pulls together every resource it can find to try to help it to happen. So by the time we get to doing the guided relaxation, we've got the brain is fully primed with all these images and thoughts and ideas of where the person themselves would like to be.
Right.
And I then choose a guided relaxation out of a large library I've written, depending on the things we've been discussing. And that then actually, in the guided relaxation, people pretty well invariably get into a pretty deeply relaxed state where their default mode network becomes much more active. They're drifting halfway between sleep and waking, and there's a lot of access to the subconscious. And really, I think what happens is that everything which has been primed, the subconscious then says, "Hey, okay, right, let's go. Now we know what we're doing. Let's get busy. We need to change some of these emotional patterns here. We need to release some tensions there. We need to change a few ideas here, and 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 make things better." And it works.
Yeah. Oh, that's really powerful because I mean everything you're saying is some of the very things I tell my clients and have for many years,
Mm,
because that's the way the neuroscience works. That's the way our brains work. And
right.
and like you started off by saying, it's science. It's real. It's not woo woo. And though I think woo woo can be scientific too. I don't know. I think they all go
Well, it
together.
can be. When I say it's not woo-woo, I mean it's not snake oil stuff. I,
Right.
I, I don't mean. I mean the results. A lot of people get. You could you could actually say, wow, that's pretty magical in the good sense.
Right. I mean, and I think in some ways it feels magical because it's outside of the traditional Western paradigm that you go to the doctor and you take a pill, or you
Yeah.
do these externally sourced things that somehow get injected and then we're changed. And this is the internal locus of control. We take the metaphor and the relaxation within, and we allow our system to then
Yeah.
create the solution,
Yeah.
which is far greater than an external thing being imposed.
Absolutely.
And so it does feel, I think it does feel like magic then, don't you think?
Yeah,
To
I
people who
do.
are so entrained and conditioned to the external.
Yeah, I think it can feel not just like magic, but it can feel like somebody's just opened a huge, refreshing doorway. Oh my God, thank God for that. I always knew that that was there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, but I profoundly believe that at the very core of us in the subconscious, there is an almost unstoppable impulse towards becoming whole and healing and being more realizing ourselves. I think it's a very fundamental, powerful impulse.
Yes, I think I agree with that. And I feel it myself sometimes. I'll be cruising right along and I'm okay. And then all of a sudden that impulse feels like it picks up. Like, okay, there's more, and I always say, as long as we're in human form, there's always more. There's always more.
Yeah,
And once you make friends with that idea and you realize that the answers start within and emerge out, then and you make that pattern shift, it is like a breath of fresh air and you can finally relax. Because then worry and that overthinking block up in our head
mm,
doesn't have as much usefulness anymore. It
that's right.
The
I
power
think
and
you're right.
usefulness or perceived usefulness goes away, right?
Yeah, and I think that for neurodivergent people, when they perceive that, have that feeling, have that sense, it's like being able to reestablish a whole bunch of sovereignty really quickly over themselves and actually feel, oh, wait a minute, some of these things, some of these qualities that I've got are actually like superpowers, and
Mm-hmm.
the world needs to adjust to me as much as I need to adjust to the world.
Yeah, amen to that. That's true. That's
Yeah.
so totally true. I was just talking to a young man who's in his early 20s, getting ready to graduate from a prestigious university with straight A's, like really cool kid. And we were talking about how through his work with me, he has been able to get in touch more and more with his inner genius
Mm,
and
mm.
the creative part of him. He's an amazing writer and he's a musician and he's got all these things, but they were always just things. And now he sees more clearly, and he'll keep growing into it, obviously, the connection of it all and the power of it all from
Mm.
his own place of sovereignty.
Right.
And he, it's beautiful to watch somebody light up
Yeah.
because they can feel and see and experience their essence in that way.
That's the really big reward of doing this kind of work, I think, isn't
Oh,
it?
yes.
And I think it's a really important point that you actually help to facilitate people in a process which is innate and already happening.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not anything which you're imposing from the outside. It's not like, hey, okay, I know what's wrong with you. You had this thing happen then, and now we're going to confront it, and then you're going to be better because I said so. It's like,
Oh, yes, yes. It doesn't work.
no, no, definitely not. Seen it tried a few times though.
Oh, yes, totally. And so the whole idea is when people realize their own authority, their own inner authority, their own agency,
Hmm.
and once that connects, everything shifts.
Yeah, yeah.
And do you ever see, I'm really curious about this, when people have that connection and you see it land finally, like it lands for them. Do you ever have people then who go through a period of grief, like of what they've lost or what they missed or what could have been if only they had known this before? Do they ever experience those kinds of things, the people you work with?
Yeah, a little bit, I think. The overriding feeling seems to be, well, Yeah, there are some things to regret because I spent so much time with that. I spent so much time locked up in that place.
Hmm.
But it doesn't usually take very long for them to decide, yep, okay, but I'm out now.
Right. So it's kind of like looking in the rearview mirror with a little regret, but I'm looking out through the windshield again.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm not looking
Yeah.
back anymore.
Yeah, sometimes I think people needs a little bit of ongoing support to keep on looking out the front and but I haven't seen it that often.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. So I know
Mm.
you all are really enjoying listening to Mike talking and I talk about this. This is such a fascinating topic. So be sure to check out the show notes. Be sure to follow him around, check on all his links, and make sure that you let him know you heard him here. And if I were you, I'd get to know him some more and follow some of his content because he's really fascinating. And I think it would serve all of us who are neurodivergent and gifted. And I just wanted to remind you to check the show notes. So there, because sometimes people miss the show notes and I get emails that say, can you tell me how to reach the person? Or can you? And I'm like, it's all in the show notes, but here it is anyway, and I have a great team that takes care of those things. So I know it's done properly. So anyway, I always now add that in. So I
That's
have
good.
another little question that I'm just kind of curious about when we're looking at the process of things. I've heard people describe the liminal space as like being in a hallway, like an endless hallway.
Mm.
And I go, okay. And then when I listen to you about like the dawn and dusk and the doorway thing, that to me resonates a little bit more than endless hallway, unless I look at the doors on the hallway, maybe.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if somebody's listening to us and they're having a hard time with the image. And like I had one person explain it was a space in between all the cells. Like, so the biologist people got that.
Oh, right. Okay. That's nice.
Um, and so what would be a really nice, beautiful visual for somebody to use to make friends with the idea of liminal space?
You
If
know, there's a guided relaxation we use for a particular kind of clearing out of masses of ideas and confusion and stuff like that, which is called the empty cup. And it consists of a guided journey where you go to a grove and there's a cup in the grove and it's full of, you look into it and it's full of all these figures and miniature people and shouting and yelling and stuff like that. And it's all of that is like opinions, assumptions, ideas, and thoughts. Could be yours, could be other people's, could be a combination of both. But then you take the cup and you pour it into a stream and you empty all of that stuff out and it goes drifting away down the stream. And what's left inside is the empty cup, the space inside. And it's so quiet and so clear and calm. But there's the space there for everything new to happen. And I think that that's a very liminal image.
that's beautiful.
I'm
I
very fond of, I was doing a thing the other couple of weeks ago on the difference between emptiness and nothingness. Because
mm,
emptiness actually has to have a container. So there's, although it's empty, there's something there. There's a structure there. And I think that's a really good image of liminality because it's about something becoming.
yes, yes, that is a very good image. I love that. So I noticed that you say guided relaxation, and a lot of people use the word guided meditation. Are you referring to the same type of thing, or are you looking at it differently? Because I think some people might be inserting meditation where you're saying relaxation. Could you
Right.
share with us the difference?
I'm very specific about saying guided relaxation because one of the most important things about the guided relaxation technique is that there is no obligation on the person doing it to focus, concentrate, follow on what's being said, get a particular result or anything like that. In fact, a lot of the time people go to sleep
Mm,
and then and I've got clients who have been listening to one or more guided relaxations for 6 months, and they listen to it every night. They love it. They listen to it every night. And they say to me, I love listening to this because I never get more than 3 minutes in.
And I'm
But I
out cold.
sleep so well and I have these wonderful dreams and I wake up and I feel great. So the real difference, I describe it, I have this idea that when the mind first turns inwards on itself, right,
Mhm.
there's this moment before you instantiate, before you start any kind of particular practice. There's this moment where there's this completely blank field, like an infinite possibility space.
Right, right.
And then you say, okay, so I'm going to do a meditation, or we're going to do a trance, or we're going to do hypnosis, or something like that. And so I think that it's at that point that there's this tremendous opportunity to be elegantly accurate about exactly what kind of state you're talking about using. And that's why I use the term guided relaxation, because it is completely about relaxing. And I think even you can even see differences in EEG from people who are doing focused meditation, people who are in directed trance, and people who are actually just being encouraged to completely relax. Different brainwave mixture.
Well, thank you for that clarification. That makes total sense. And I know that when I'm doing the guided relaxation things, I fall right asleep. But when I wake up, it's like I feel like I heard it all.
Yeah,
I'm connected to it in a way that's not necessarily verbal, but
yeah,
it's an
that's right.
experience.
I can't prove this, but I have an intuitive sense of a certain degree of certainty that what happens uh, is that because the conscious mind actually takes a complete break and it feels like you're asleep or whatever. I think it gives the opportunity. I think it gives the subconscious an opportunity to actually get busy at kind of like mega speed. It can process so much more because it hasn't got to interface to the conscious and explain what's going on. Right.
Right. Yeah, it's a much smoother ride.
Yeah.
It doesn't have all the static.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, that's
But
great.
I mean, I encourage my clients to actually make friends, to think of themselves as re-engaging in a sympathetic and glorious dance between their conscious and subconscious minds, and allowing their subconscious to actually do all the heavy lifting that it's so enthusiastic about wanting to contribute.
That's brilliant. They give that conscious mind a break too. You know,
Exactly.
it's like, oh, that just sounds so lovely. Oh, I love it. All right. Is there anything that you wanted to share that we didn't get to before we get ready to end the show? I do have a couple final questions, but I always like to make sure if there's something special you want to say or something that you would like to share with everybody, this
I
would
think
be.
one of the most interesting things that I've researched in the past few years, and I've gone into it in a lot of depth, and even wrote a special guided relaxation around this, is intergenerational trauma.
Mm,
Because I don't think it's known about enough, and I don't think people recognize its potential impact on them enough. But the fact that it's possible for us to epigenetically or socially or by transmission actually inherit conditions of anxiety and trauma, which may even have happened in our grandparents' or great grandparents' time. And I do think that there are credible ways of dealing with that. So I think it's an important message to get out that for people who can't remember ever having had any experience apart from anxiety or panic in the background all the time, there are reasons for that, and it can actually be addressed.
mm. And that gives a lot of hope to people. I've been talking about intergenerational trauma for years and years and years, and not too many people do. I'm with you
Mhm.
on that subject, but I think giving somebody hope that having the understanding that yes, it can come down and we can inherit it that way, but hope that we're not stuck in it.
It's not a destiny. I think
Yeah.
that's the important
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
It's huge. That's a huge. I'm glad you brought that up. That's huge. That's another show. I'll have to have you back on the show for that topic alone because it comes up a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that we would have a good conversation on that if you're willing to come back.
I'd love to. I'd love
Uh,
to.
yeah,
This has gone so quickly.
I know it's like crazy because I have so many things I want to talk about. So now I have another opportunity. I'll have you back. And I have two final questions before we end the show. And the first one is this. What is the most memorable food you've ever eaten?
Wow, that's a tough one. Most memorable food I've ever eaten. I'm going to go with something pretty homely here. I'm going to say that in Barry, just down the road on the coast, there's a place called Mr. Villa's Fish and Chip Shop, and they make their own hazelnut and raspberry meringue for a dessert, which is out of this world.
That's it.
I've never seen it bettered.
Oof, that sounds decadent and delicious. Yes. Beautiful. All right. And so this is my favorite question. And that is if we were going to put a billboard up that the entire population of planet Earth was going to see your specific message, what's the message we're going to put on the billboard from you to humans?
I think it would be that giving yourself space and calm isn't a luxury. It's a fundamental infrastructure quality for your life.
That's beautiful. And that's true. Yeah, I love that. Well, I want to thank you for being on this show with me today. It went so fast, and we're definitely going to have to get together again because I do want to talk about intergenerational trauma because it's a very big topic. And I think we would have a great conversation about it. And so thank you, Mike, for being here. Now, remember, everybody, check the show notes, follow Mike around because he's got some cool stuff to say. And thank you for listening. So remember, everybody, put your face to the sun so the shadows fall behind you because you're a rock star. You're here on purpose with a mighty purpose. So go out there and let your light shine. And remember, rest is your inherent right. You don't have to keep pushing. It's okay to let go. Until the next episode of Someone Gets Me, it's Dianne and Mike saying, be well. Thank you for listening. I trust you gained some valuable inspiration and information. Please join me and other visionaries in the Someone Gets Me Facebook group. Or for more information on my services and additional episode, visit someonegetsme.com. Again, thanks for listening.